Hello guys, so I've just come off of another stream with my year 9s. I stupidly managed to completely forget that I was streaming today, so apologies for the slower response there. So hopefully you have been able to tune in for today's lesson on looking at how we look at subroutines. Now, what I wanted to be able to do was create a working example of how we can use subroutines in our in our programming, because when it comes to your programming project that you'll be doing when we get back, whenever that is, when it comes to doing your programming project, you will want to make sure that you understand how to use subroutines properly, and you understand how to utilize them in your code properly. So I'm just going to show my screen, and I've got here Thonny, and again you could do this on the jump2.cc trinket, the Python-new. You could do it that way. Whichever way you decide to do it, it doesn't really matter, as long as you are using something that understands Python code and can run that code. Now, what we're going to need to do is I want to create a calculator to show you how we can use subroutines effectively in Python. So the first thing we're going to need to do is actually, so there's a few things we're going to need to do. So I've left a bit of a gap here so that we have space for them later. Obviously, I can always add spaces by pressing the Enter key, but this just shows a few different parts to it. So the first thing I'm going to do, if I'm creating a calculator, I'm going to ask the user for an input. So I'm going to say num1 equals int, because I want to change it into an integer, input. So if I don't change it into an integer, I can't do maths with it. Input, enter number 1. Okay. And then, I forgot to close my second bracket there. And then num2 is same idea, int, input, enter num2. Okay. Or number 2. Okay. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask them which symbol they want to use. Do you want to add, multiply, divide? So which, that's same idea, symbol equals input, which symbol do you want to use, question mark. And I can put in brackets plus, minus, divide, times. Okay, I'm just going to use those for a moment. Don't forget to close all of the brackets and all of the other bits. Which symbol do you want to use? This is now where I'm going to use some of my subroutines. So if the symbol is equal to, is a plus sign, then with my colon there, if my symbol is equal to a plus sign, I'm going to add num1 and num2. Okay, and this I will be adding up here. So def, to define my function, def add, and then I'm going to put, I could put in num1, num2, but I'm actually going to call it something slightly different, just to show you that it doesn't matter what I type in here, they still are referenced here. So I'm going to say 1 and 2, okay? Okay, and then what I'm going to do, I'm adding my first number and my second number and sending it back to this bit here. So there are two ways I can do this. I can do print 1 add 2 equals, and then this is where 1 add 2 equals, and then 1 and 2. Oops, I've typed in the number 2 instead of the okay. Now let's see how that works. Let's just run it so that we can see how this works. So I'm going to put in calculator just to see what we've already got. Enter number 1. I'm going to say 5. Enter number 2, 4. Okay. What symbol do you want to use? I'm going to use plus because at the moment we don't have any other symbols added in. 5 add 4 equals 9. Okay, because I've got 1 plus 2 here. Okay. And then I can do the same idea for the other ones. But there are other ways of doing this. I can instead of doing that print statement up here, I can return my 1 plus 2. Okay. And then instead of add here, I can put in print add num plus num, right? And then if I run it, enter number 1, I'm going to say 3 and 2 gives us and a plus gives us a 5. Okay, so both ways still work, but this way you can actually utilize this value as well. You can, if you decide that you want to add and then divide and then do something else, you can utilize those values in there. You can even do stuff like using string manipulation, which I might decide to do in a moment if I get a bit bored of just doing a simple calculator. You can use some string manipulation to find out where different items are in your input. So I'm going to add some other symbols. So if symbol equals minus, then print minus num1, num2. Okay, and then up here I'm going to define a function called minus, and again, I don't have to say num1, num2, or even word 1, word 2, but I'm going to say, could even put in completely random things like banana and apple, but there's no point in using those because I want to use words that make sense. Okay, so first and second, okay, I could use those instead, keep typing L instead of colon. And this time I'm going to say return first minus second. Okay, and it will do that calculation for me, return it back into this value here, and print it out. So actually, if I debug this, you'll see I must have forgotten a bracket. Again, I'll debug. So it's noticing that there's a function called add. It is noticing that there's a function called minus. It's going into this line here, you're asking for an input here. So enter number 1, 2, and then enter number 2, 5. Which symbol do you want to use? It will ask, And this time I can use minus. And so it's going, if the symbol was equal to plus, which it's not, so, oh, I should have put else if here, shouldn't I? If the symbol is equal to minus, then I'm going to go into this. Symbol is minus is equal to minus. So it's going to go print minus 2 and 5. So it's looking at 2 and 5, looking at minus 2 and 5. What it's actually going to do is open what it knows about this function here, or this section here, and it's opening it, and it's going, first is equal to, as you can see down here, first is equal to 2, second is equal to 5. So if I go into this, first is 2, second is 5. 2 minus 5 is minus 3, because I didn't think to do it the right way around. It's going to return that, and it's going to print it out, print minus 3. Okay. If we then add in the other if statement, should be fairly simple. I'm going to put elif instead of just if, because remember, if you already know that something is a plus sign, you don't need to ask whether it's a minus sign, do you? So elif symbol equals, what else have we got? /, otherwise known as divide, and print divide num1 num2. Okay, and then I can put in my function def divide, and then this time I will put num1 num2 again with the L. Okay, and then return num1 divided by num2. Okay, and again, if I run this, it should run. Ooh, I've forgotten my double equals. Again, I've been programming a little bit in a different programming language, Java, to create an app on Android, and they don't need the double equals for their if statements. There's some syntactical differences between Java and Python, so there's a couple of things that if I slip up on, that's probably one of the reasons I might slip up. Other reason might be that I'm just doing badly at doing this. So enter number 1, I'm going to say 10. Enter number 2, 5. What symbol do you want to use? I'll use the /1, and it gives me 2.0, and it does that because when I use division like this, it gives me a it will give me a floating point number. Now, if I was to do 2 /, it would only give me that first section, the first number here, instead of both 2.0 or 2 point whatever. And obviously, if I was to do a less easily divisible number, let's say 10 divided by 3, and put the division in there, it does show you the full value, and obviously it's got a weird bit at the end there, but I think that's a rounding issue there. So that shows your divide is working correctly, and that's basically what you would expect to see on a calculator as well. Next one, elif symbol is equal to times, again with the L, print multiply num1 num2. Okay, and up here I'm going to put def multiply, and then item 1 item 2. Okay, and then let me just leave a bit of a gap here just to make it easier to read. Then return item 1 divided by item 2. Okay, and again, not divided by, times by. Lots of times on this one. So if I do enter number 1, 5 times 6, and then times, that gives me 30 because 5 times 6 is 30. Now, this is all well and good. This is a fairly straightforward thing, but what I want to do is actually make this a little bit more interesting by getting it so that the user can treat this like a real calculator, not just enter number 1, enter number 2. So what I'm going to do is a little bit of string manipulation. So I'm going to play with this a little bit, and I might need to spend a bit of time looking up some things, but this is where it becomes a little bit more interesting. So the first thing I'm going to do is ask the user for their input, which is going to be their calculation. So I'm going to call it calc. Calc equals input. And notice this time I'm not turning it into an integer, because I'm going to be finding out what the symbol is by seeing what they type. So what is your calculation? Question mark. Something like that. Okay, I might leave a gap there just to make it a little bit nicer for the user to look at this item. Okay, then what I'm going to do is look through each item in the calc. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to check to see if that item is the symbol. So for I in range len of calc. So remember what len means. That means the length of my value. So in this case, because this isn't a list, this will be the amount of the length of whatever they've typed in. Okay, so for I in range len calc, if calc I in, and this is where I can use in phrase to say if the character that I'm looking at the moment is in this phrase here, which is going to be plus, minus, forward slash times. If I've got one of those symbols, if one of those symbols is in there, then it will do the following thing. Okay, so if calc I in that, then symbol equals calc I. And the other thing I want to do is everything before that symbol, and what I might do is create a first index equals 0. Okay, so everything before that symbol I'm going to put in up to a certain point, and then in fact, let me leave that for a minute, because actually that's not as bad. So my symbol becomes calc I. What I'm going to do above this, because if I change the symbol at some point, this will become a bit more complicated, but so I'm going to look at calc first index. And what I'm doing is basically going up to in, or I don't even need to put first index, right? So what this will do is give me every item that I've looked at so far. And oops, so first index to I. What I'm going to do is num1 equals, and then I'm going to turn this into an integer. Okay, now I'm going to keep going and second index. Hang on. Num1 equals. I'm going to make this a string for a moment and then it will change to an integer. So if my number, so if, I'm going to say and here, and num1 is not equal to nothing, or is equal to nothing even, then I'm going to do that. Else, or elif, calc I, I'm just going to copy some of this, but some of it's going to be a bit different. Get rid of that second L in elif. If my item that I'm looking at the moment is another item and num1 is not equal to that, also I want second index equals I, okay, or I plus 1, okay. And so what I'm doing here, I kind of want to be able to show you on like a whiteboard exactly how my brain's working on this one. So I'm looking at the first index up to I, and then I'm calculating my symbol, figuring out what my symbol is, and my second index up to I. So if calc I in that and num1 equals that, yeah, and then so I'm going to put num2. Oh, hang on. If num2 equals second index. Wait, sorry. Calc second index up to I. Right, so this is where so what my original plan was to have it so that, say if someone typed in something like let me type it down here instead. So if someone was to type in 5 plus 4 minus 3, then it would give you the first bit done first, and then it would work out that value minus 3. So so what I kind of needed to do is work in a very similar way that it usually looks at things. And that's what I want to do here, break. And what I also want to do is symbol 2 equals calc I and symbol 2 index equals I. Okay. Now, have I spelled symbol right? Yeah, I think I have. That just looks really odd. Symbol 2 index is I. Right, okay. So break, what break does is breaks you out of the loop, so it doesn't keep going. And then what I'm going to want to do is, yes. So, yeah. So what I'm going to do is actually put all of this into, why am I copying it? I probably don't need to do that. I'm going to put all of this into a new function, def calculate, right? And I'm going to put in a string, so whatever the calculation is that the user has typed in, right? So that is calc there. And what I'm also going to do is calc first index num1. Okay, and so all of this here is going into this here, which may mean I need to do a bit of indenting. Yep. So, and then what I'm doing here is, oh, I need this bit here as well. Outside that for loop, if the symbol is equal to plus, I'm going to print, I'm going to add. Didn't mean to delete that, I meant to just indent it. There we go. Adding num1 and num2, etc., etc. Right? And then it's going to return, in fact, instead of print, it's going to return these values. Right? And this is where we're doing something called recursion, where we're going to be getting the value that we have received, and we're going to put it back into that other item. So what we actually want to return is num1, num2, symbol 2, not symbol 2, symbol 2, and symbol 2 index. Okay, and we're going to do that on all of these. I'm copying that, pasting it into all of these. Now, this is where a little bit of recursion goes on. So, while then of, yeah. Oh, hang on, what's going to happen here is, yeah, so while first index is equal to second index, this is going to be slightly different. I've made this far more complicated than necessary because this first number, this number that I'm returning here, is going to be involved in the calculation, isn't it? And that's going to be my num1 the next time round. Oh, yes, so yeah, so that's fine because my num1 is not going to be equal to nothing the second time round, is it? So num2, calc second index up to I, good. And then what I might also do is just put in a full stop, or in fact, \n is what I'll do because it might just be that I've gotten to the end of the line. Is that going to work? Because I don't know. No, it won't include a \n, will it? I'll put a full stop just for the time being because usually you can put in like a full stop at the end. Or actually, no, I won't put in a full stop. I'll see if I can do it without it. Okay. Sorry if I'm complicating you. If you're getting confused, please let me know. Ask some questions in the chat because I don't want you to get too complicated by this. I'm just kind of going through using some ideas here. So what I'm going to do, calculate calc. So what I need here is 3 values, calc, first index, and num1. So I've got those 3 values here already, first index and num1, okay? But what I want to do is yeah, so yeah, new calc. new calc equals calculate calc first index num1. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is while new calc, no, length of new calc is more than 0. Length of new calc is more than 0. While the length is more than 0, I'm going to be calculating and sending out those values. So I'm going to do the same thing again. But actually, new calc, no, so this can't work. New calc 0. So I'm looking at the first item that's being returned. In fact, no, that's still not going to work. New calc first indexed to second index. While, okay, first index is less than len of calc. Just give me a moment because I'm trying to get my head around this and get rid of that bit there. So what will be given here is a number. So first, num1 equals new calc 0, and then first index, so symbol is going to be symbol to index. So actually, it's going to be that second item rather than the first one. So yeah, so right, if that number1 is nothing with calc, what I might do is call that symbol instead of num1. Symbol 1. Yeah, I'm going to say symbol instead of. Now that might be confusing, but I'm actually going to change that a little bit, and that will allow. Where did I put in? So I'm going to put in symbol here, and I'm going to put in symbol here. Okay, num1 is new calc 0. Okay. So, the other thing I'm going to need is if this calculation is, so if I have got to the end of the list, while first index is less than the length of the calculation, then calculate first index and symbol. Okay, so calculating calc first index symbol. New number1 is new calculation 0 symbol equals new calc 1, because that's what the symbol is going to be, and then first index is going to be new calc 2. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing again. But I'm just going to put all of this into this because it's going to be a little bit easier to do that. Okay. I'm just going to change this again. Don't need this to be new calc, I can just call it calc still. Actually, no, I still need no, hang on. This last bit is the bit that's going to be a bit different. So first index symbol. Right, one other thing I need to change here, but I can't remember what it is. So length of calc and changing this value here, so I've got my num1. Oh, I do need my num1, don't I? Ugh. And I need num1 here. So, and I'm going to say num1 0. Okay. No, I can't do that because it might make it times by 0, and then it will come up with an error. So I'm going to have to put in that, and keep changing things back and forth here. And I haven't practiced this before, so if it all goes completely messed up, then you'll just have to forgive me. This is me doing a little bit of programming and trying to get my head around the idea of doing it. So let's see. Length of the calculate. Calc. New calc. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create calc equals calc from first index to end. Okay. So I'm just going to run this and see what happens, because I'm a bit intrigued to see what happens. So 3 plus 5 minus 2. Okay, here we go. So return 1 plus 2. We've got, yeah, so I had forgotten to change things into integers at some point. Yeah, so calc and 2. Yeah, I forgot to change this into an integer. Okay, so let's run that again. What is your calculation? 3 plus 5 minus 2. Symbol to index is not defined, so symbol to index. So what's it managed to do so far? So it's calculating. So it's done the first part. So if I run this, if I debug this, you can see that it will have done the first part, but not necessarily the second part. So it's asking for the calculation. 3 plus 5 minus 2. Okay, going into first index is 0, symbol is nothing, num1 is nothing. Okay, then let's go into this first index, which is 0, and length of calc 3 plus 5 minus 2, which is current. The amount of characters that are in there are 5, as it says here. 0 is less than 5, So new calc is going to go into calculate 3 plus 5. So this value here, first index is 0, symbol is nothing, num1 is nothing. Okay. So it's going to open this up and go, okay, it's going to look at the length of my calc, which is again 5. So it's going to go from 0 to 4. Okay, 0 if calc I, so 3 plus 5 minus 2, that first symbol there, which is 3, is that in there? No. So it goes, that's false. So the whole thing must be false, because if you and anything with something that's false, it just becomes false. Okay. Then it goes, is calc I, which is, again, we discovered was 3, in there? It's not. So again, false. Then, so I becomes 1. Calc I, which is going to be a plus this time, is plus in this thing here. Yes, it is. And is num1 equal to nothing? Yes, it is. So true and true makes true. So we're going to go into this here. Num1 becomes calc 3 plus 5 minus 2 of first index, so 0 up to 1, which will give me just 3, and I can turn that into an integer. And my symbol is going to be 3 plus 5 minus 2. The number 1, the index 1, which will be the plus. And my second index will be I plus 1, which is going to be 2. Okay, so now it's going to look at I is 2. It's going to look at 3 plus 5. So it's 5 is not in there. And it's not in there either. So it's going to move on. We're looking at the minus now. So is minus in there? Yes, it is. But is num1, which is now 3, equal to nothing? No, it's not. So true and false makes false, so we're not going in there. Calc I, 3 plus 5 minus 2, we're looking at the third index, which is minus. Is it in there? Yes, it is. And then is num1 not equal, so 3 is not equal to nothing, so that is true. So true and true goes into here. Num2 becomes the calculated, that calculation, which if we look down here is 3 plus 5 minus 2. And the second index is 2 up to 3. So num2 is going to be 5. So we're just looking at this value here. Okay. And our symbol 2 is going to be that minus sign. So 3 plus 5 minus 2. Our symbol 2 index is 3. Okay. And it's remembering all of this information in its own, it's in that function, but nowhere else, which is why we need to return these other things. So the symbol is add. So the symbol is going to return add num1, which is 3, and num2, which is 5. Okay, and it's going to go, okay, add 3 and 5. Let's go and open that up. It's going to return 3 plus 5. Okay, and that's going to be 8. And then symbol 2, it's going to be returning the minus, and it's going to do symbol 2 index, and this is where symbol 2 index doesn't exist, which, let's have a look. Oh, have I put something in capitals or something? Symbol 2 index, have I not spelt it the same? Let's have a look really closely. I can't quite see it from this distance, so give me a second. Oh. So really what I thought it was going to be doing is returning this value here, so symbol 2 index, because as you can see here, symbol 2 index does exist. Now it might just be something very simple in that I've manage to forget how to spell or how capitalization or something. I don't know if you can see anything there. Now I'm really not sure. What's it saying? What's the error that's come up? Symbol 2 index is not defined. But I do have a symbol 2 index there, which is confusing me a little bit there. Let's have a look. So yeah, it comes up with that error. So let's try and work out why that isn't defined. Again, have I spelt it incorrectly? Have I? Let's make this a little bit simpler. Let's call it SYM2. Okay. Let's get rid of all of this. SYM2. SYM2. SYM2 and SYM2. Okay, so now you can see that all of them are the same. Let's just run it again quickly and see if it runs. 3 plus 5 minus 2. And ooh, it seems to have run, but I forgot to tell it to print out anything after it's finished. So what I'm going to do is yeah, so print num1. Let's see if this works. If I run it, what's your calculation? 3 plus 5 minus 2. So this should give us a value of 3. It does. So I'm going to go through it again, because num1 is just giving us the answer of what we've returned. So I'm going to go through it again. Hopefully, because I've already gone through it once, this should give you a bit of an idea of what's your calculation. I'm going to put in a different thing this time. 10 times 2 minus 5. Okay. So obviously, you do the timesing first. One of the things that have I spelt symbol wrong? One of the things that I've done here is not thought about the fact that bidmass or bodmass is a thing. I'm just looking at the first 2 values and then the next values after it. So all I'm doing is going, okay, these values first, and then whatever the answer to this is, minus 5 or whatever it is. Okay, I'm going to carry on. So first index, so the length of this is 6 this time because it's 10 times 2 minus 5. That's true. So it's calculating these values a bit like we did before. So if you look at these at the bottom here, let's just make sure that you can see all of those. So the length of the calculator, oops, I've just, oh dear. That's interesting that it's given me a 1. 10 times 2 minus 5 should be 15. So I'm going to run that again. Oh, press the wrong button. So I pressed the wrong button a moment ago. So unfortunately, things went a little bit pear-shaped. So I'm going to put that in again because I'm hoping that it will give us the correct value this time, or can at least show us why we got the wrong value. So 0 is less than 6. It's going to calculate 10 times 2 minus 5. So it's looking at, so I just thought of a reason why it might not have come up correctly. So 10 times 2 minus 5, range. Okay, so it's looking at 10 times 2 minus 5. The first value is 1. That's not in there. Still not in there. So we're going to go up to the second value, or the first index anyway. We're looking at the 0 this time. Not in there, so that's false. Same idea here. And then 2, we're going to be looking at the times symbol. So 10 times 2 is in there. So that's true. And num1 is currently nothing, isn't it? So that's also true. True and true is true. So num1 becomes, so 0 up to 2 would be 10. Turn that into an integer. It's 10. Make my symbol equal to whatever the value is, which is a time symbol. And then second index is 2 plus 1, which is 3. And then keep going. We're looking at the next value along, which is 2, which is not in there, so we're going to keep going. So that symbol there, minus symbol, is in there, but num1 is no longer equal to nothing. So we're going to go into this here, calc I. We're looking at minus symbol is in there, and the num1 is equal to nothing, or isn't equal to nothing even. Calc 10 times 2 minus 5. Second index, 3 up to 4 is 2. So it's making that integer 2. So our number 2 is 2. So as you can see, number 1 is 10, number 2 is 2, and our symbol is a time symbol. Calc becomes, our symbol 2 is a minus. The place where the symbol 2 is, the index, is at index 4. So then it's going to break out of that loop because we've got a for loop going on. We don't want it to carry on when we're just looking at the first part of it. Is a symbol equal to plus? Yes. No, it's not equal to plus. Is a symbol equal to minus? No, it's not. Is it equal to divide? No, it's not. Is it equal to times? Yes. So we're going to multiply 10 by 2. So 10 times 2 gives us 20. Okay, then the symbol 2 is minus, and the num2 is 4. So it's going to return all 3 of those values. New calc becomes 20, a minus, and a 4. So I'm going to just get up the variables so you can see those at the side here. And then num1 becomes calc 0. So oh, I'm not looking at calc. I don't want calc 0. I want new calc 0. That's why this hasn't worked. Right, new calc 0. So, and then that one worked. Yes, so apologies for that. Right, let's see if this now works. What's my calculation? 10 times 2 minus 5 gives us 20, which also doesn't work. So I think that's because it hasn't actually gone into the final time around, because we've got, it's not going to calculate that final section. So what I'm going to try and do, I'm going to do it one more time afterwards. I might just be running this a little bit. Oops, don't want that. So I'm gonna run it again. What's my calculation? 10 times 2 minus 5. Oh no. So second index, reference before assignment. This should be as, because you calc. Where are we? What line are we on? Line 20. So because I haven't got a second index this time, it's gone a bit confused. It's gone, how's that work? So yeah, because it's gone into it a second time and realized that the second, because I haven't told it what the second index is, so that is going to be an issue. Right, okay. I think you're getting a bit fed up of me just talking to you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have a go at fixing this and figuring out what exactly I've done wrong. And I know at the moment that this is almost working. In fact, if I was going to run it with 4 plus 5 minus 6, and then add another number on the end, plus 2, and then, I don't know, go to, oh, hang on, I should have debugged this instead of, let's just quickly go through these. 4 plus 5 minus 2 plus 6, and I can press enter. Just going to keep going through and go into that for a moment. In fact, what I might do is just quickly skip over these. Okay, so over here you can see that it's done the calculation. We're at the point where it's at minus 2 minus 6, and num1 is 9. So it's done the calculation of 4 plus 5, and then the next calculation it wants to do is 9 minus 2. So that's one of the issues that I'm going to have to deal with, figure out how to get this second index to be referenced in the right place. So apologies for a really long-winded and complicated thing, but this is the kind of thing that you might have to do, maybe less recursion involved, which is probably where one of the issues are here. So one of the things I've done is get it to kind of the value that I've got here, that the information that I've got out of it calculating, will just calculate it again and go back to an earlier value. So I'm gonna leave it there. I know that this has been particularly interesting, but I hope that at least the very beginning of the lesson was very useful to you, in that you know now, you definitely know how to utilize subroutines and how to make them work in your code using this kind of thing. I mean, we added quite a bit extra here, but the idea was that we are still putting in our variables into these items here, where they can be accessed here and then returned to us, and it prints out that value. So if we had put print instead of return, like we did at the beginning of the lesson, that's how that would work. So again, sorry for the long and complicated lesson. I just thought it'd be a bit more interesting to go through some coding and think about the way that code will work. I have put far more effort into this than I needed to, and I'm sure you are a bit overwhelmed by it as well. So I'm going to, as I say, leave it there. I will continue next time. I might decide to do something a little bit different, just because basically at the beginning of this lesson, all I wanted to do was this. And then I tried to make it more complicated by putting in longer string manipulation based things. Hopefully some of this you've been able to understand. Some of it you might not have been able to understand. So, and that's fine. I just would like to know that you have understand the basic ideas of using subroutines properly. Okay. Have a good week, guys. I hope to see you next week. See you then. Bye.